Well, as the band comes down, I want to ask you a question. How many of you guys wore your bracelets this week? How many of you guys had to shift your bracelets to the right hand a whole lot? Yeah. We have one honest person back over here. All right. Well, here, I want to remind you of the grade. If you had to switch it less than 5 times, you get an A. If you switched it between 5 and 10 times, a B. 10 to 15 times, a C. 15 to 20 times, a D. And if you switched it more than 20 times, we might have failed this exercise, right? So if you can't remember, if you lost count, Chase Scott, that's probably not a good thing, you know? So, do what? You can take an incomplete. That's what we all need to take, right? Because we probably need more work on that. So what we're talking about, if you missed last week, we talked about James chapter 3, taming the tongue. And we all took a bracelet and we put it on our left hand. And if we said something mean or something that wasn't godly to someone, we had to take it and switch it to the right hand. And the only way to get it back would be to either apologize to God or apologize to that person we were talking about. So they did a lot of switching back and forth. If you lost yours, if you need one, whatever the case may be, we have plenty up here and you can stop by and get one afterwards. But it is an incomplete because this is a lifelong lesson that we need to continue on. So I challenge you, at least through the rest of this series, to keep your bracelet on and keep going. I've got to give one award, though. There's one award that needs to go out, and it goes to Mr. Bob Brewis. Bob had to switch his bracelet while handing the basket to his wife last week. That was the quickest switch of anyone to date. And she called him on it immediately. Boom. So he gets the quickest award. Hopefully he doesn't get the most. Right, Bob? So this week we're continuing our Back to School series and kind of celebrating this time of the year. And I'm glad you guys could join me down here in the classroom. And as you know, I'm going to be talking to you guys, but I'm really going to be talking to these older kids back here too. All right? So we're kind of going to be doing this together. But today I've got kind of the second lesson lined up for you. And would you do me a favor? Would you grab my Bible up there? Yeah, it's that black book. I'm probably going to need that in a minute. I don't have it memorized yet. I'm getting close, but not all the way there. So I got something for you. I got some bad news to share with you today. Okay? Are you ready for some bad news?
Yeah.
Here's the bad news. Today we're going to have a test.
Yay!
Yay? You know that's probably the only time I've heard a yay when someone mentions having a test. Most of the time we don't like having tests, do we? Tests are kind of bad news, aren't they? How many of you have ever thought that teachers give us tests just to punish us? Anyone?
No.
Let me tell you a little story about that. In 3rd grade, my teacher, her name was Charlene Blackshear. And I remember her like yesterday. And Miss Charlene's job was to teach me my multiplication tables. And so every Thursday we would have a speed drill. Do y'all still have speed drills?
Yeah.
We would have a speed drill and she would give us 10 questions on this speed drill, and she would give us something like 15 milliseconds. It was no time whatsoever. It was so short. She would give us a little bit of time, and then when she would call times, you took them up, and we graded them. And you know what happened? If you got 7 out of 10, you passed the test. But if you got less than 7 right, you got 1 lick with a paddle. Do you know how much time in 3rd grade I spent in this position? I mean, as we got on up in there into the 8s and 9s, I would just I'd put my name on the test, hand it to her, and go get in line because I knew it wasn't going to be good, right? But even then, that test wasn't there to punish me. The test was to see if I was mastering multiplication, right? It was to see where I'm at and if I'm getting any better. And in life, we have tests as well. And in life, the tests aren't to punish us. Sometimes I hear people, they'll say, you know, I'm going through something difficult in my life, so God must be punishing me for the way that I'm acting right now. And that's not true. God doesn't mete out punishment like that to us. God doesn't give us tests in order to punish us. But God uses those tests to show us how our faith is growing. Okay? And so we're going to look at that. Our tests help us to grow. Tests in life help our faith to grow. Tests in school help our knowledge to grow. And so the Bible has something very specific to say about tests. So we're going to be looking in the book of James today. And we're going to be in the 1st chapter this week. I'm going to share verse 2 through 4 with you. Okay? So y'all listen real close. James 1, 2 through 4. Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And so let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Listen, when I was in 3rd grade and I knew Thursday was coming, I was not looking forward to the test with joy, right? I was not excited about the test coming. But James is telling us here that we are to look upon these tests and be thankful and count it all joy when we're tested, because the tests that we endure in life are going to help us to grow closer to Christ. And so we count it a joy. When a test comes, we don't like, oh no, not a test. We look and we say, all right, I'm going to see God work in my life in a big way. And so we kind of look forward to tests. That's what James is trying to tell us in this verse. But when we take a test, what's the goal? I just told you my goal in third grade. I wanted 70, right? I was shooting low. I just wanted no licks. But what's the real goal? When you take a test, what do you want to score?
You want to score at least close enough to 100 as you can.
Yeah, you want to get as close to 100 as you can. You want an A, right? None of us shoot the bar for a D. Sometimes we're very thankful for that D, but we shoot for that A, right? We shoot to make, we want to score good on tests, right? What happens when we score good on a test? Ice cream? What house do you live at? I think you're just trying to, oh, Papa, you said ice cream, so now you got to give me ice cream. That's not it. But what happens when we score bad on a test? Usually get in trouble, don't we? Yeah, we usually get in trouble. So the goal is always to do our best that we can. But what about when a trial hits us? What about when we're tested in life? It's hard to be perfect in life, isn't it? It's hard, but it's not impossible. Let's look back at that verse. Well, let's wait on that. Let's look back at this verse. In James 1, verse 4, it says, "Let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete." In other words, the trials of life, the tests in life, they leave us perfect if we approach them in the right way. And so our goal is to be perfect. So how do we get there? I'm going to share an example. My wife, Sarah. Y'all wave at Miss Sarah. Sarah was a good student. And one particular class she was having some trouble with was calculus. And so she would study really, really hard for a calculus test. She would open that book and read and memorize and study and study and study. But then she took it a step further because she wanted to make an A. She didn't want to make anything less. She would have a perfect score. And so she would pray before she would go to bed. God, help me with this test tomorrow. Give me the mind of Christ. Give me all the knowledge of the universe so that I can do good on my test. That sounds like a pretty smart plan, right? That's a good way to be prepared, right? She took it one step forward. After she prayed her prayers, she got in bed, she put her calculus book under her pillow, and she slept on top of the calculus book and hoped that the information in that book would ooze out through her pillow and into her brain overnight, right? 2 years? See, she was hoping that knowledge would come out of this book and go in while she was asleep. Do you think that's a good plan? I don't know, because I slept through calculus and I didn't get good grades. So I don't know if it works. But usually mine was more like in class, not at night on my pillow. But she believed that God would answer her prayer, and she believed that God was the only way that she was going to be able to get through calculus. So she put her faith into action, and she trusted God. And it might seem silly, but she had good grades. And Miss Sarah's a pretty smart person. She makes great decisions. Look at the person she married. Right? So we know she's super smart and she has great taste. So if we want to be perfect, if we want to make good grades in school or in life, we have to be prepared. We have to make sure that we trust in God and rely on God. And that's kind of what James is leading to. In the book of John, Jesus says this in 16:33. He says, "In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world." Let me ask you this. Has a teacher ever brought up a pop quiz to you?
Yes.
Like one you weren't prepared for? And what does it make you feel like? Awesome? Not for me. My stomach would start going blah, 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 and I would be not feeling well. Suddenly I'm like scared to death. Why didn't I read the book? Why didn't I study last night? Maybe I can cheat off somebody. I'm going through all these things. None of those things are good. But tests kind of come out of nowhere sometimes, and they grab our attention and they make us feel very nervous and very fearful. I want you to turn around and look at the big kids just for a second. Can y'all turn around and look at them? Their tests, these big kids, they have tests in life too. And their tests are so much harder than your tests. Okay? You guys can look back around here. I just want you to know your tests on math and reading and spelling seem very hard, but the big kids have different kinds of tests in their life. In their life, they have the test of marriage, and they have the test of raising children, and they have financial tests where suddenly the bills equal more than the money, and they don't know what to do. And sometimes it's sickness, and sometimes it's caring for older family and other people who are that they love that are sick. The tests that affect older kids, big kids, is so much more difficult. But it's the same thing as a pop quiz for you because it comes out of nowhere and catches us off guard. And when we get in test situations, sometimes we get full of fear, right? But what does Jesus say right there? He says, take heart, I've overcome the world. You don't have to be concerned about your test. Turn around and look at the big kids and say, you don't have to worry about tests. That's right. We don't have to worry about tests because Jesus has overcome the world. Jesus overcame calculus, okay? As big as that was, He overcame calculus so that Sarah didn't have to, right? I take that the same way. Jesus overcame calculus. Why do I have to take it, right? But Jesus overcame the world. So everything that we face that brings fear into our life, we can just trust. We can let Him have it, and He'll make a way for us. And so we've got to do our best. That's the one thing Christ expects from us, from you and I, is that we strive for perfection, that we try our best to do our best. I want you to say this. Look at the screen for me. I want you to say this with me. If we do our best, repeat it.
If we do our best,
we will pass the test.
we will pass the test.
Now let's say it all together. If we do our best, we will pass the test.
If we do our best, we will pass the test.
Okay. You remember sometimes Mom and Dad says you got to be quiet in church?
Yes.
This is not one of those times. Okay? Right now, for the next few seconds, you can use your outside voice in church and no one can get on to you, okay? Because Pastor Scott said it's okay. So let's say this really loud, okay? As loud as you can. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
If we do our best, we will pass the test.
Good stuff right there, right? That's the lesson that James is trying to give us here. He wants us to strive towards perfection, but we have something else in here that's really, really cool. It's called being graded on the curve. And I know y'all might not know what that means, but I'm looking at adults and there are adults going, thank God for the curve, right? Because here's what the curve means. The curve basically is this. Instead of giving you the grade you deserve, they kind of factor in how everyone did, and it usually means your grade goes up some. And the curve is awesome. So you and I have this thing called the curve, and it's called grace. And God promises it through His grace that if you and I will do our best to be faithful and to trust in Him and to lean on Him, that He will make our imperfections perfect. In other words, if we try really hard on our test to make 100 in faith, but we only make a 90, but that's the best we could do on that day, and we really tried hard, God will make it out to be 100. That's what grace does for us. It kind of fills in the gap when we can't go. But I want to show you this. One of these band members. Let me show you this. I know some of you out there can't read it, but over here it says, instead of saying it's good enough how it is, maybe we should try thinking, is it really my best work? Do sometimes you just try to get by with what you think is good enough? No. Think about when you clean your room. Yeah. Do you really clean your room, or are you just trying to hide all the dirty stuff as best you can so Mom don't find it? Which is it?
Hide all the stuff.
Y'all don't want to say, do you? Because you know Mom's back there going, yeah, but we don't really do a great job of cleaning. We hide the stuff. We don't do a great job of cleaning. We kind of push it away. But when it comes to matters of faith, we need to make sure that we're doing our absolute best. If we say we believe, we need to actually believe and not allow fear to come in and take over. So let me go back in James 1, verse 5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith, without doubting. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. Let me tell you something. I want y'all to pay attention, because this is the greatest thing you're ever going to hear. In life, you're going to be tested. Here's the good news. It's an open book test, and cheating is encouraged. Amen? Right? What teacher has ever told you that they're having a test and I want you, if you don't know the answer, just come up and I'll give you the answer? Right? Does teachers say that all the time, don't they?
That's the best teacher ever.
That would be the greatest teacher ever. I would have been like making all A's, right? But that's exactly what God tells us. In life, when you have a test, something comes against your life and it's difficult to work through, if you'll listen and open your book and ask Him, He will give you all that you need. He'll give you all the information that you need. He'll give you the answer. So let me ask you a question. All right, y'all are smart, right? If a test comes up against you and you don't know the answer, but God says, I know the answer, and all you have to do is ask, what seems to be the most logical thing? Pray and ask Him, right? But I want you to try and look at the big kids again. Do you know what the big kids do when they come up against tests so many times? Instead of praying or opening the Bible and reading, what do? They worry. Just shake your finger at the big kids for a second. Go ahead. Here's your one chance. That's what big kids do. We worry. When we get news about something going on, or when the bills outweigh the money, or when things aren't going right in our life, big kids start to worry instead of trusting, opening the book and asking for the answer. How dumb are big kids? Pretty dumb sometimes, right? Here's the thing. You guys have a chance to do it right. Pray and trust that God will give you the answer. Let me ask you this. Has God ever lied to you?
No.
He never will. So the answers are there, and all we have to do is trust in Him and not let fear come into our life. Proverbs 21:31 in the Message version says this. It says, do your best, prepare for the worst. Here's the most important part. Then trust God to bring the victory. You can't get through the big problems. You can't get through the big test on your own. But God can each and every time. So there's no need for us to be fearful. There's no need for us to be worried. All we have to do is trust and believe and lean upon God. That's what it means to be doing the best that we can. That's what it means to be a disciple. And that is how we unlock the ability to pass all of our tests in our life. So we're going to do our best, right? If we do our best, we pass the test. Remember? So what does it look like when we do our best? Let me read this to you in verse 22. James says, be doers of the word and not hearers only. This is the word he's talking about. And in Sunday school, you learn about being about what the Bible tells you to do, to love one another and to always be nice, right? To read and pray and believe in Christ. That's what the Bible says. And James says, if you are doing your best, then you are doing the word of the Lord. And not just listening to a good sermon or a good lesson or something, not just listening to what mom and dad say to do and then going on, but actually doing it. That's what it means to follow Christ. And that's what it means to do your best. And when we do our best, God meets us and we pass the test. And so that's what I want you to get from today. So when you face problems, whether they're in school or whether they're at home, in life, you be brave. Don't worry. Teacher comes in and says, pop quiz time. The first thing you do is not to worry. The first thing you do is pray. God, help me out. Help me out. Give me the answers. Help me to be calm and know what's going on. The second thing is just do your best. The Bible tells us to do everything we do as if we're doing it to God. That means taking a reading test or a math test. We do it as if we're trying to please God with our test. And so when we do our best, God makes up. We're not always going to make 100s. But in life, if we're doing our best, God fills in and makes things right. And don't your parents tell you that? Don't your parents tell you that just do your best? If you're doing your best and your best is a C, then I'm so happy with a C. Don't I tell you guys that all the time? But if you usually make B's and suddenly you make a D, that's not your best. And that's when we have problems. So always do your best and trust God. Trust God. When the problems that you guys hit, when you become big kids like these big kids out here and you start having big issues in your life, trust God. But don't worry. And don't fear. Because God's in it. Doesn't He promise you that He's never going to leave you nor forsake you? Doesn't He promise in His Word that He's always going to be there for you? Don't worry. Just trust in God. And when you're going through difficult times in life, when you're going through difficult tests, here's the thing. It's going to be hard. When Christ says there's going to be tribulation in life, He's saying it's going to be difficult. But He's right there in the midst of it. And if you'll persevere and you'll push through, it's going to be worth it. And that's what I want you to hear. If you'll push through, whatever the test is that's facing you right now, if you'll just push through, it's going to be difficult. But God is right there in the midst of your test. And it's going to be worth it in the end. So stand strong and don't give up. Stand strong and keep the faith. It's going to be worth it. And God's going to meet you on the other side. This song is kind of our song of commitment, our song of response. We just invite you, the words will be up there, you can sing along if you like, but we just invite you to remain seated and simply allow these words to pour over you. And maybe where you are in your life, you need to say it with your own voice. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. Allow these words to pour over us as the Spirit continues to guide us and teach us.
It's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be worth it all.
We can say it's going to be worth it because at the beginning of our verse today it said, count it joy, trials and temptations come your way. Count it joy when tribulation comes. Count it joy when you're tested. Because in that, you're going to see your faith. And our tests are meant to help us to grow. Our tests are meant to draw us closer to Christ. And so in the midst of our tests, if we will stop worrying, if we will stop seeking solution with our own hands, and we will trust Christ and believe in Christ and allow Him to guide us, we will see our God. He's there. He's in the midst. So persevere and push through. It's going to be worth it. Just don't give up. Keep your eyes on His face. I got some homework for us this week. Okay? To do good in anything, we got to study. There's no way around it. You just have to study. It's a part of doing our best. We want to do our best for God, right? So we're going to study this week. I want you to read the book of James, the entire book. I know it seems like it's rough, didn't you? I know what you said. I heard so many people out there do the same thing. Their face went, oh. It's 5 chapters. The whole book is 5 chapters. So I want you to read it, but I don't want you to read it by yourself. Because one of the things that we do when we're growing up and we're studying for tests is it works really well when we have a study buddy, right? Someone we study with. So I want you to find someone to read the book of James with this week. Maybe it's mom and dad. Maybe it's a sister or brother. Maybe it's a best friend. But read the book of James together with someone else and maybe talk about what you're reading, okay? God will reveal so much to you in the midst of that. God will speak to you and show you. So this week, I want you to read the book of James, okay?